Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1013 just came out, and if you are a new viewer to my channel, let me just fill you in real quick. One thing that I've been pushing for a long time, several years in fact, actually early on in Act 2 was when I started saying this, was that this raid on Onigashima was going to fail. This whole big battle that all of Wano was leading to was going to end in failure. And, much to my surprise, early on this week, I started getting spoiled by a few people on Twitter. People were telling me that, Amorj, you were right, the raid failed. The raid failed. Everyone was telling me from YouTube, on Twitter. I'm bad at avoiding spoilers, so people were just spoiling me left and right, saying the raid failed, this happens, that happens. I was kind of blurring it out, but I got the general consensus being that the raid failed. So, I'm like, how could the raid possibly fail this chapter? What could have happened this chapter that makes so many people believe that the raid failed? I was naturally very excited for this chapter. So, this morning I open up, the site that we all read One Piece on, I forget what it's called. I'm reading through it, and I get to the end, and imagine my disappointment when I find out that this is what you guys were all gassing up. This is what you believe is the raid failing. Some generic cliffhanger panel of Luffy looking somewhat defeated against Kaido. Forget the entire series. You know how many panels I could go through during the Luffy versus Katakuri fight alone that mirror this exact panel. Imagine my disappointment when I realized that this is what you all believe is the raid failing. So we gotta have a little chat, alright? Until we get any sort of context on what just happened, and by that I mean maybe some sort of flashback next chapter, actually letting us see Luffy lose to Kaido in a sort of irrevocable, indisputable manner in that Luffy is done for. This panel means nothing, alright? Maybe it means something, but we are not gonna celebrate prematurely. Did you expect me to come to this review with confetti and streamers and talking about how we were right all along? No. I want no one running through the streets talking about how the raid has failed, how Morge and the gang were correct. Okay, we are going to hold, and we are going to wait. Maybe this means something, but I'm not gonna bet the house on it. We don't know what's gonna come out of this. How many cliffhangers have we had in Onigashima so far? This is nothing new until it's nothing until it's something, alright? Let's be very clear, everyone. We do not accept anything less than absolute victory. And by that I mean absolute defeat for the Alliance in the context of the story, but absolute victory for us. Meaning we're not gonna celebrate over some panel where it looks like Luffy might be defeated. We are not celebrating till it is clear that this whole shabazz, this whole raid, this whole assault on Onigashima is going down in flames, okay? Till the whole thing, the whole building's crumbling down, it's all crashed, it's all burned. It's clear that the bad guys won this round. We are not celebrating, alright? So do not get me hyped up like that again. This was not what I am talking about. I have not been waiting so long for just some panel of Kaido talking about how he's won and Luffy looking like he's beaten as he falls into the ocean. He's not falling into the ocean. Okay, so there is, however... Alright, so we got that out of the way, right? We've all learned a lesson from this. One, please don't spoil me. I know you guys are going to do it anyway, so please don't spoil me in the future, but you guys are going to do it anyway. One, please don't spoil me because you get my hopes up and then, this happens. Two, we don't celebrate prematurely, alright? We're not the type of people who are going to be like, it's the third quarter and we're up by like 5 and we're just saying that, we have won the whole thing, alright? The whole thing needs to play out, alright? I knew that there was no way that the raid failed this chapter because I'm like, there's no way that we can conclusively know that the raid fails from one chapter, what was going on chapter 1012 to chapter 1013. There's just no way, okay? So I was skeptical to start with, but when I saw it was just this, I was like, oh, man. Maybe next chapter we're gonna be, there's gonna be confetti and streamers and stuff, if we get the full context, and it's clear that Oda is writing this the same way that he would write, Luffy's defeat to Crocodile in the Desert or something, where this is a very conclusive, definitive defeat, and it's gonna take some time for, this is gonna be a domino effect, everybody's gonna start losing, and there's gonna be some time to regroup, etc. afterwards for everyone to come back together for round 2, okay? That's totally possible, maybe as soon as next chapter, but at this moment, to me, this just looks like the natural ebb and flow of events. At some point, it looks like that Luffy's got the upper hand, at some point it's going to look like Kaido's got the upper hand. Let's just wait and see. I would love to see next chapter we get a full flashback of what happened, But, you know, as far as we know so far, Luffy hasn't even used Gear 4th yet. He hasn't even used Gear 4th yet. Until he uses Gear, like, it's not really a defeat if Luffy didn't even use Gear 4th against Kaido, and we're just seeing, you know, base Luffy got beaten or something like that. For all we know, Luffy can go Gear 4th at the start of next chapter and fly right back up there and continue the battle. So, there is, however, one really, really, really good piece of evidence that came out of this. There is something that does make me believe that the raid is going to fail that came out of this chapter that has nothing to do with Luffy, and it has everything to do with the start of the chapter. So, rant out of the way, let's start from the top, okay? So, we begin with picking up off of the Nami, ulti, and Big Mom scene. I really like this whole chapter, I think, aside from that last panel. Not because the last panel was just a bit of a disappointment, but I already knew kind of going into it. I was like, okay, there's no way that the raid fails this chapter. This is just not possible. So, for the majority of this chapter, I really enjoyed it because it stuck to one scene. I think One Piece chapters, for me, I personally like the most when they stick to one scene and let it play out from start to finish. We do have a lot of cross-cutting going on throughout these chapters, as of late. So, I really like that we just got to stick with the Nami ulti Big Mom scene. We got to see, first of all, Big Mom, a little bit more insight into how she's feeling right now, so she's really just looking out for Tama, but is happy to take out Ulti. 2, we got to see Ulti and Nami almost get into a big fight, but Big Mom popping out a new attack, taking Ulti out in one blow, and that, by the way, is the big thing that makes me believe that the raid is actually possibly on track to fail. Because the first thing that had my alarms kind of going off is that, like, oh, this could be good, is when Page 1 was defeated by Big Mom, right? There was still the possibility, you know, like maybe Page 1, maybe he gets back up, although it did look like that was a fairly brutal Conqueror's Haki-infused attack from Big Mom, so it looks like it's very doubtful to imagine how Page 1 would get up. And now Ulti? In this one, I have, like, fairly high confidence that Ulti won't get back up, because that was a fairly strong attack from Big Mom, right? That was a combination of 3 of her strongest homies. Well, I don't know exactly what Napoleon contributed to that attack, for the record, but he was there. So at least 2, technically 3 of her strongest homies were basically involved in that attack. Maybe Ulti gets back up, but it looks like she got the Page 1 treatment. That's really big. Okay? Because if Oda's not going through, we all were in the mode that, you know, Oda's setting up all these matchups. Frankie gets Sasaki, Robin, Brook get Black Maria, Nami and Ulti get Page 1. When Nami and Usopp get Ulti in Page 1. When Oda's kind of lining things up like that, it makes it seem definitely as though, you know, we are in that endgame stage of the arc where the dominoes are just going to go from start to finish. Everybody's going to get their fights. It's going to conclude with Luffy getting his big fight. But it's not going that cleanly. Oda's kind of messing up the board a little bit now and changing it to basically be, okay, first of all, Nami's not getting the fight that it looked like she was definitely going to get. Usopp's not getting the fight that it looked like he was going to get. Usopp, we could kind of brush that under the table because it was like, okay, maybe it's both of them, maybe Usopp gets somebody else, but Nami and Ulti seemed absolutely set in stone as of the last chapter. It seemed as though they were both very strongly motivated to take each other on. This was Nami full of confidence and determination, but she didn't get that fight. And what's more is she lost Zeus. Okay, we don't know exactly what happened with Zeus this chapter. I'm sure Zeus will be back in some capacity somehow. What it will take for that to happen, we have yet to know. It's possible that Oda was kind of teasing us and that Brook wasn't completely absorbed by the end of this chapter and we'll get to see him come out or something like that at the start of next chapter. It's possible, but I did like the way that this arc kind of flowed in terms of even just I think the homies were the MVP of this chapter for me personally, in that I liked all of their interactions. Hera's got her own personality. Prometheus is like, well, you were made to be my girlfriend. She's like, I don't think so. It's kind of funny to me because when you're a homie, there's not actually like a lot of options. So if Hera's not interested in Prometheus, it's like, wait, you gonna go for King Bomb or something like that? I'm pretty sure he's dead. Also, just the fact that the homies seem to have like a really strong attachment to life and like actually are living sentient creatures. I mean, we've gotten that general idea so far pretty clearly, I think, from King Bomb and everything like that, but just the way it was stressed again that Zeus does not want to die. Like this, we were watching a character die before our eyes. Zeus he's like a person. Zeus did not want to die. I just think that it's, you know, the fact that we've seen so many homies casually die over the course of the series in a series that really avoids death to, you know, the maximum possible extreme. But it does introduce these characters that are clearly living sentient beings that have consciousness and don't want to die and have a desire to live and have goals and personalities and desires. and they just casually get wiped off the board. I think that's hilarious. But I did actually empathize a lot with Zeus's little plight throughout this, this little series of events where he's seeing, option A that he kind of has been ostracized from, which is Big Mom and her gang, and then option B, which is Nami, who cared for him and everything. Well, I guess as a useful tool, cared for him. I mean, I like seeing Zeus's little dilemma. He did feel like an actual little character in this chapter, which, I don't know. It's funny to me when a character like Zeus, who we did not really consider a character, gets his own little story arc over the course of a chapter. I like seeing his, I guess, heroic sacrifice attempt for Nami. And I like seeing Nami, lend a hand towards the end, or extend her hand essentially to try and save him. And I really like the fact that it didn't work. So to me, that was a little bit of it's not a twist, but it did add a bit of, I think sometimes things go a little, maybe over the course of this Onigashima battle, things go a little too easily or straightforward, sort of. So to me, as I was reading this chapter, it did feel a little bit like, okay, so Zeus is being absorbed by Hera, but he made the show of the heroic sacrifice. Now Nami's going to save him, and that's going to wrap that up. I did like seeing that, one, Big Mom can put a stop to that, essentially, and it's not up to, Nami feeding some, black thunderballs and stuff like that, that isn't going to solve the fact that Big Mom has absolute control over her souls. So I did like to see that it was actually what would normally have probably been a successful effort, straightforward, friendship, reach out the hand, Zeus gets his mojo back, joins up with Nami. Big Mom was very easily able to put a stop to that, which I think, it was a very small way to define my expectations, I suppose, in the chapter that I liked. And it does add a little more seriousness or weight to the situation that they're up against Big Mom, and honestly stronger Big Mom than before, because now she's got more effective homies, and it's not going to be easy whatsoever. And then we got Kid coming in. So, Kid, let me get the one, it's not even negative, out of the way real quick. Let me say this. I would love to see more variety from Kid's attacks, alright? Love to see more variety from Kid's attacks. Punk Gibson, cool. Seen it probably 50 times at this point, or some variation of it. Cool, but that's your thing. I guess that's just the way it's gonna be. Some variation would be nice, whatever. That aside, I am very, very, very happy to see that Kid actually just, one, came in and is actually was able to stop Big Mom, but two, it does look like they are actually going to get to have a one-on-one fight for some period of time, hopefully. I think that Kid is probably the character that has been most, I guess, disrespected by the community in terms of what our expectations were for him. And I think that's a little unfair, because it's clear that Oda is going to make Kid an important character. It's just, it wasn't necessarily his time to shine, in particular on the rooftop. And that's totally fine, but you have to look at what he just did. It may seem minor, but how many characters have actually fully stopped and essentially overpowered a Yonko attack, right? We've seen Luffy, clashing with Kaido. So Luffy's been able to stop Kaido's attacks recently, right? Once he's unlocked his Advanced Conqueror's Haki. I think, just talking about characters in this raid of Onigashima, right? So Luffy was able to do that, but it took Luffy achieving a whole new level. Zoro stopped Kaido and Big Mom's attacks for a moment, and it was a combined attack, so it was temporary, obviously, what he was able to do, so you can measure that as you will, whatever. Marco, I believe, stopped one of Big Mom's attacks early on, but then he got caught by her. So it depends. I think just the fact that, what I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to scale every little interaction, essentially, but the fact that Kid just straight up stopped one of Big Mom's attacks, and it seemed like a pretty serious, angry attack. He just stopped one of her attacks and then, basically squashed her. That's a big deal. Obviously, that's not going to be the trend of the fight going forward. She can do more than just swing a sword, but I think that is nothing to look lightly upon at this point in time. Just because Luffy's doing some crazy stuff upstairs with Kaido doesn't mean that we should, there was a time where if Kid had just jumped in, stopped Big Mom's sword, and squashed her, then we would have been like, oh my god, Kid's the strongest supernova or something. Just think back to Luffy in the Udon prison mine, when Big Mom broke into the Udon prison mine, and Luffy putting all he had into all of his, little training and everything like that, all of his best efforts into just trying to stop Big Mom for a moment, and immediately getting, sent flying and flattened. Imagine if we'd fast forwarded a little into the future and known that, oh, Kid could have just straight up stopped Big Mom and slammed her to the ground. That would have been pretty hype for Kid. It's just that, the scale of what impresses us is always changing, so after seeing, Zoro cut Kaido, Luffy doing what he's doing against Kaido right now, maybe I think some people might you know, not realize that what Kid just did was really, really impressive. But, you know, I think as the fights go on, people will be a little more impressed. So, first of all, again, I like the whole beginning section of the chapter. It was a nice extended scene, got to see some good stuff from Zeus, got to see Kid, and most importantly, ulti went down, which means that I don't think that we're set up necessarily for all of the final battles to play out, which means that this might be a big, you know, raid ending and failure setup. Now, let me talk really briefly about the Luffy Kaido stuff. I think that no matter what I took away from that most was that, first, let's acknowledge option A, which is that this defeat is the actual defeat for Luffy. I think no matter what, we do need some sort of a little flashback into what happened prior to that panel, if this is the big defeat. If this is the big defeat, we need a little bit of a flashback to that prior panel, because actually seeing it happen and actually seeing Luffy, just seeing an image of unconscious Luffy isn't, like, you know, that's good for a tease and a cliffhanger, but it's nowhere near as effective as, say, for example, Luffy versus Crocodile, either of the 2 rounds that he lost, where we actually got to see Luffy go through the motions of being overwhelmed, overpowered, and ultimately broken, right? Not broken, but beaten down. That's much more effective in terms of actually swinging the drama of the arc. This, at the moment, isn't enough, right? If this was the domino effect that essentially led to the downfall of the entire raid, this feels really weird that we just get a random cutaway panel when we miss the part where Luffy goes from winning to losing, okay? So I do think that a flashback is necessary. Now, if Oda doesn't want to do a flashback, like if there is no flashback or whatever because of time constraints, then I would hope that this was not actually the big defeat. And that I would hope that what Oda is saving up for is for Gear 4th Luffy to come into the play. Because Gear 4th Luffy, that's when we know Luffy's actually using everything he has up his sleeve. A defeat is only really effective if you see the character use everything they have up their sleeve and still lose. That's what made Luffy losing to Kaido in round 1 so effective, because Luffy went Gear 4th right off the bat, faster than we'd ever seen him use Gear 4th before. He went from Elephant Gatling right from Gear 3rd into Gear 4th, gave another Kongorgan rush down right after that, and even that did nothing, and then he got one-shotted. That was what was so effective about that defeat. So I definitely think that if this is the end of the line for Luffy, then we need a flashback. Otherwise, if Oda wants to keep showing more of the fight, then I would think that Gear 4th is the next thing around the corner. One thing that Kaido said to me that was very interesting was that he implied that basically they need to see Luffy defeated for their faith to be broken in him. And I think that that's a very, very interesting idea. I would really, really love it if Luffy were to come back in Gear 4th. Maybe not next chapter, maybe a little bit down the line. There's a lot of ways that Luffy can be stopped from falling into the sea. We could even see something like Yamato jumping out. Maybe not Yamato. I don't know how much, if Yamato is a white tiger devil fruit, how much that would really help in this situation. But there's plenty of things that could happen that would allow Luffy to bounce back from this, essentially. I do think we need to actually see the events of Luffy taking on Kaido at full power and then actually being beaten. And I would really think it would be effective if this coincided with Kaido smashing Luffy down through essentially the skull of Onigashima into the main stage, or the main section of the dome, so that everyone could see him defeated. I think that is by far the most powerful way to conclude the arc. It would time up well if Onigashima comes to rest in the Flower Capital, so you get kind of simultaneous movement of Onigashima coming down to rest in the middle of the Flower Capital, and Luffy coming crashing down through the roof to land in the main dome. It's just, you know, it's a good director move, right? So I think that that's something we could potentially look forward to, but at the same time, I think that just the fact that we saw a Luffy supposedly beaten at the end of the arc, at the end of the chapter, doesn't actually mean that much. It will mean something if we actually either get a flashback, or if Luffy bounces back, goes Gear 4th, goes all out, and then is still defeated. And I would really, really like to see what Kaido hinted at towards the end of this chapter come into play, where everybody gets to see Luffy's defeat. So that's all for this video. If you enjoyed, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you all next week.